Well, so let's quickly do Annie. So, you know, the latest incarnation of Annie obviously originally is a comic strip, and then, you know, 1970s Broadway musical, 1982 feature film, then a couple of rubbish TV movies, and then a stage production sequel which wasn't any good. And, you know, through all of this, Annie keeps smiling and singing and dancing. And along comes you know, the new incarnation, and it opens amidst this sort of. Firstly, there was a lot of hostility about, people saying, well, Annie has to be a sort of fair-skinned, ginger-haired waif. She can't possibly be an African American. Then there was all the stuff about the copies of it leaking online as part of the hacking scandal. Now the reviews are out, and they're frankly not very good. And I have to say, I think it's better than many people think. The film itself has many flaws. Firstly, I think Will directs it as if he's slightly embarrassed about it being a musical, which is a weird thing. I mean, you know, he doesn't have a background in musicals, and there are moments in it when characters say, "Is this really happening? Are you really singing?" In a way which sort of feels like it has to apologise for being a musical, as if somehow its audience will think it's unhip. And I think that's a major misstep. It takes some of the old songs with some new songs, and it has to be said that the new songs do remind you just how great the old songs are. There's also a shriekingly terrible performance by Cameron Diaz, although it's not entirely her fault, because it's partly to do with the way that she's directed as Colleen Hannigan, who is the sort of screechy, now the person in charge of the foster home from which Annie comes. Those are all the problems with it. On the plus side, Quvenzhané-Wallis, who was so terrific in Beasts of the Southern Wild, I think she was the youngest person ever to be nominated for a Best Actress Oscar, I thought was really, really good. Makes the role her own, is charming, and has that same unaffected feeling that we've had when we've seen her on screen before. I think she does a pretty good job. I think Jamie Foxx makes the best of a role which tries to update the Daddy Warbucks characters, that now he's a mobile phone billionaire who's running for mayor. And actually, the relationship between those two is kind of charming and does sort of work. So although the film itself is terribly sort of flat-footed and awkward about being a musical, and although it sort of feels apologetic and there are loads of things that are wrong with it, Quvenzhané-Wallis pretty much, you know, saves the day, and Jamie Foxx does the best he can, understanding that the material itself is not entirely perfect. So it's by no means a triumph, but it is nothing like as bad as some of the reviews would have had you believe.